Hey, I'm Cole Horseman, cloud security at KKR. That really means I just have a lot of slashes in my role. Here to talk today about identity and access management, pretty hot topic at Inforce this year, so I'm excited about that. And the topic is kind of how we looked at identity access management, started with a lot of problems, and ultimately how we found solutions through automation. So yeah, without further ado, agenda is I'll run through IAM trap, so kind of like what our priority burn down and things like that, how we tried to address it in multiple ways that weren't automated, which cost us a lot of time, and then the discovery that kind of pivoted our approach to identity access management, and then the results and how it can help you. All right, so the identity, or the IAM trap, we were chasing a lot of things. We had a legacy environment, access keys everywhere, admin access everywhere. I'm sure all of you can relate to that. Really no formal dedicated role to identity and access management when I came in. In fact, I came in as a cloud engineer, not to actually come in and focus on identity. We realized there was a gap, so I started getting more dedicated to security, which included identity at the time. But where do you start? Do you fix all the bleeding here? Do you focus on how we should build this going forward, splitting the time between that? Also a very lean team. It was just me to begin with, dedicated to this role. How do you fix all that with 100 access keys that had no idea what processes were where, what they had access to, et cetera? So before we discovered Sonrai, something I just passed through my LinkedIn feed. Somebody mentioned it to me, and I looked at it, and it was like, oh, these are the problems that we're trying to solve. But before we had that, we had 2,200 identities with unused sensitive permissions. So that's a 1 guy to 2,000 identity ratio. Not really practical to solve in a manual way, obviously. 1,500 unused identities. The roles that we had out there, NHIs, that just weren't doing anything. We had, like I said, full admin access for developers. We had 1 shared production account. Me coming in, I had no idea what this thing needed to do. This was before a lot of the new AWS services that could point out, like Access Analyzer and things like that. The access keys were out of control, no automated way to rotate those. And then we had audit kind of in between, challenging us to make sure that we had access key expiration and things like that. No governance, no guardrails. It was just AWS raw. So we started to get some tools that helped highlight issues, and that's kind of where they stopped. We had the ability to see problems. We had the ability to see where they were connected and how bad the issue was, and we even added later contextual data. So now we know we've got sensitive data, we've got identity issues, overly permissive access, and again, go back to the problem where we don't have a way to fix it. We just have ways to highlight problems. Service control policies, as you hopefully know or are aware of them, they can be pretty powerful. I've definitely had my issues where, the old saying, you got to break a few eggs to make an omelet. I've broken some eggs. Trying to fix things is going to break production processes that we had a shared environment, so access keys that we didn't know what had access to. There were a few processes that we had to kind of risk breaking to make progress. We ran into character limits. We also we want service control policies that are applied at the org, but we also want some exceptions in individual accounts or OUs that are special in some way or another. How do we apply service control policies in an automated way at different scopes? Again, team was 2-person team. We got somebody else in to kind of help out, but it was a job that we were going to take approach to. We were going to try to build our own solution. It was going to take about 6 months for us to figure out a pipeline to automate this, to figure out a least privileged pipeline. And even then, if we start removing permissions, obviously we're going to have problems come up from that too. So when we found the permissions firewall, Sonrai, we were able to take the services and block those at the root, but we also had services like Bedrock, where we really only want to allow that in one account for testing, right? When it comes out, we had a lot of people that were trying to figure it out, but we wanted to centralize it in one space that was a safe area to do testing for AI services. So the service block allowed us to do that with at a granular level at a certain scope, and then also do it in a CloudFormation stack, so it was automated under the hood. And the deployment took minutes so that we could do this very quickly. We could respond when someone needed access to a new service. They respond to us, and we could do that pretty like in an agile fashion, I guess, really quickly. Third parties. So we discovered some, identities. So another problem that we were faced with is all those unused identities. So Sonrai refers to those as zombies. Any unused permission that hasn't, or identity that hasn't been used in, set your threshold, 90 days, for example, we could go through and apply a block to that identity, initiate a permission on demand through a Teams application that would allow us to, within seconds, reinstantiate that identity when needed. And a lot of cool ways that we could automate this. Again, devs were happy with it because security and teams benefited because we could lock those identities down. Devs were happy with it because we could do it within a few seconds. It didn't interrupt their process. So we wanted to be able to do that. Third parties, just getting the visibility of who had access externally to our environment was a huge lift. Sonrai actually does something about it as well. They can do a third-party blocks where essentially we can whitelist external access to our S3 buckets, STS assume roles, those danger zones you don't really want third parties that you haven't identified. We can block them automatically with RCPs under the hood. So permissions, we wanted to make sure that we restrict, and we're going through a merger at this time, so we've got a couple different situations. We've got two organizations, two methodologies. Sonrai can meet you where you're at. We, on the insurance side, we're heavily regulated. We're audited pretty rigorously, and those unused permissions, we kind of ripped the Band-Aid and were able to block the services that we wanted to block. Again, initiate those POD requests, permissions on demand, keep things moving. But we also developed a system to where developers could self-approve in their development environment, get used to the platform. We kind of democratized the firewall component to our app teams. So we worked together to kind of figure out a way that worked for them. And additionally, they have junior developers now that are coming in, and they're using the permissions on demand to make sure that a junior developer isn't making some change to their S3 bucket policy or something that they're not aware of. So we've kind of shifted into allowing oversight from the security team and allowing developers who know what's expected in their environment, who are the users, why are they doing this, they're going to have a lot more context on what services are trying to be accessed and why. So the permissions and being able to do that kind of allowed for us to work together, and I think has really helped us work in the same direction with application teams. So another benefit coming into KKR, we've had a couple of scenarios come up where we didn't have a mechanism. We had a couple of super users in accounts that were full admins, kind of that standing access. Sonrai has a JIT access approach that also has the man in the middle, the team's approval mechanism. So if I need to go access the production account, I can't just go do that without an approval message. So I'll go into the account. I'll get a message from Teams that says, hey, you need to request access to this account. After that approval, again, within seconds, they're up and moving. And it's all kind of, it's all very fluid process. All the chat ops process, again, within seconds, I'm getting access to that account. So this is a diagram of how we set it up. We delegate our organizations to the identity account that we have dedicated for this. So in development, this is just an example of how we have, in development, we have the service deny example. So at the organization, Sonrai is controlling the service deny for like an Internet of Things service that AWS has released, or Bedrock. So those are your blanket, I think that's been covered today as well. Those are your blanket thou shalt not. Now when you start looking at the other accounts, so this is distributed to our QA account as well, we apply third-party block for like Prisma Cloud or something like that. we decline them or say we're shifting to a different vendor, we can lock them out immediately with managed and again, automated service control policies and resource control policies under the hood. So the sensitive permissions, how that works, is if you have, and again, I think they were talking about it in the keynote, protecting your identity service, your network service, so EC2, like VPC create peering connection. Those would be sensitive permissions for this environment. We'd apply it to multiple environments, but those are the things you really decide what you want to protect in those accounts. And then you say for EC2 VPC create, we want to initiate a POD request for that API call. And that will ensure that that message, that workflow goes through the team's workflow and for a team's approval. So again, if we're talking about the service control policies, those are deny across the board or whatever scope. Those are the ones that you say, those are the things that we're not going to do here. And then third-party access, prevent that third party, any external accounts from your organization. Through the sensitive permissions, you can block individual API calls that are based on the MITRE framework on what is managing the risk to that environment. And then production, I have just in that OU, quarantine the zombies or whatever, so we just have a threshold, 90 days. If it goes past that 90 days, we are going to quarantine that identity and lock it out until it's needed again, if it ever is needed. We have a very low ratio of zombies that have come back and tried to make a process, but also you can make exceptions to those if there are scenarios where processes run like 91 days or 120. That is a customizable threshold. And then JIT, again, production access, that's kind of where we started with KKR. Production access and the standing access is something we want to get rid of immediately, so we applied JIT right away. So those are kind of the different areas that we're covering, and again, all under the hood, automated. It's deployed through CloudFormation, so all the updates that you're doing are through like stacks and stack sets and version controlled. So this is kind of the way that we applied. So we started out with kind of doing an assessment of what it could see. We started testing the functionality of the platform, testing how this is going to deploy in our environment, testing with the identity account, quarantining the zombies, which just under the hood, just applying a tag, which is how it's so quick. It applies a tag and blocks the zombies with that tag. So when you hit Teams Approve, it's just going to remove that zombie tag, and then you're off and running again. But in the meantime, that identity is locked down. You cannot use that identity without the approval mechanism. So by doing this, we were able to, again, allow security teams to gain back control of identity, allow developers to start getting involved in the platform, as well as letting us know their exclusions, letting us know the things that needed to run no matter what. So you can protect and make sure that you're not going to break business processes by doing some upfront work, setting up your exemptions at the root. These processes are business critical. We cannot break these processes. So you set those exemptions up, and then you fire away. And then we were able to protect our services like EC2 or our network services, identity, and data, making sure that S3, people aren't making public buckets or things like that. The zombies alone, like again, at that first slide, and that's continued to kind of go up. Like we still have dev processes, even some QA and production processes that have just never run. The thing that scaled with us when we first started is the amount of functions, for example, to roles, 1-to-1, which is what we wanted. But that number goes up every day on the amount of roles that we have in our environment, and so does the risk. When the roles amount go up, the risk does as well. So that's something we want to get out in front of and proactively protect. So that's, again, one of those preventative controls that we're doing JIT, we're doing quarantining the zombies, and we're not removing permissions, which is the dangerous part. I've looked at a lot of solutions, and a lot of them want to remove permissions that you already have, which really means if that process is needed again, now you got to go figure out what permissions they had before, and you've got a whole different set of problems. By taking this approach, you're just locking it down and the permissions stay intact. and so that you don't have that risk, but you still have the ability to go back and retroactively get that thing back into working condition. So, and again, the identities of the SSO, the service roles, over 2,200 identities that we had, and again, still growing. We were able to scope down different services for different accounts. So development, we're even a little bit more flexible there. So our production account is pretty cut and dry. Sonrai calculates what services are used in the production account, and we allow those, but maybe in a development, there's really only a short list of services. We want application teams to keep trying out. We want to be able to innovate. We want to be able to move quickly. This allows us to say in development, we're going to be a little more open. Production, these are our non-negotiables. So your ability to do that at a different scope is really easy to do. And then the JIT access, again, that's also saved us on audit trouble. It's a solution that we can easily implement to provide an approval mechanism prior to doing any changes in production. So that saved us a lot on audit. And the ability to audit with the records that we have reports. We can provide those to auditors. We also get with the JIT access an AI summary of what was done when the person checked out the account. So it's something that we'll end up using a webhook to upload it to ServiceNow, and that will get us an automated evidence for our change control system. So let's see. So our operations time, again, this is going to take us a long. We would not have been able to do all of the things that it does in that 6 months. 6 months was just to try to build a pipeline to right-size permissions that was definitely going to be error-prone and probably get us into a few issues. This is the platform that kind of helped us get to that point without needing that. And again, 6 days, we were able to do our evaluation, turn on you can take different approaches in different environments, but you can turn on one-click protection and you're locked down day one if you want to take that approach. A little drastic, but go. I mean, just depends on your appetite for risk there. Okay. Yeah, so I think we've kind of hit on this, but again, quick summary. Now we're in a really good condition. We basically do a true up of zombies, make sure that our zombies are quarantined. Again, we're in a much better place than we were, and we've had Sonrai for, I think someone told me before this, I think we've had it for about a year now. And I cannot say enough about how they've saved us a lot of time and money. I mean, even money. You think about services that you block. Just by blocking them, you're going to save some cost. We've got 2 minutes left, but yeah, thank you.